first to Pakistan, where authorities today yet again failed to produce evidence against Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief Hafiz Saeed. The Lahore court has given them 2 more days to act. But will Pakistan change? Here's a report.
The mastermind of the 26/11 Mumbai attacks was showered with rose petals after he emerged from a hearing at the Lahore court. The celebrations began after an application to extend the house arrest of Hafiz Saeed was withdrawn. Under pressure to keep the global terrorist confined to his home, the Pakistan government has some time from the court. They have 2 days to come up with a strategy to save face. Since January, the Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief has been under house arrest alongside his 4 aides. The detention is due to expire soon, but so far the Pakistan government has failed to produce any evidence to keep Hafiz Saeed under detention. It's no secret that terrorists are getting a free run in Pakistan. Politicians from both sides of the aisle in India know that, and they are speaking in unison, blaming a complacent Pakistan.
UN, US have already banned Hafiz Saeed and his organization Jamaat-ud-Dawa by trying to give reprieve to Hafiz Saeed. Pakistan is only confirming to the world that it is Terroristan, and it has no interest even in trying to erase that image of a country that is only exporting and fomenting terror. I think this is the world is now today confirmed that Pakistan has no sincerity about handling terror.
It's very, very disappointing what Pakistan has done. After some of their statements of their prime ministers and others, some people are hoping that prime minister will change. Although if you remember on your channel also had very often said that ultimately it will depend on what the ISI and Pakistan actually do to terror camps, to Hafiz Saeed and others. And it has proved that it's the ISI and the army that actually runs that country, and they have no sense at all as to what they need to do, and they will not take any action to either prevent terrorism or arrest the terrorists who are being harbored in their lands.
The matter is now before the Punjab Judicial Review Board. Despite several dossiers from India and a $10 million bounty by the United States government, the Pakistani government is still struggling to produce evidence against Hafiz Saeed. Recently, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Khwaja Asif admitted that the Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief is a liability for the country.
Is under house arrest. But I agree with you that on that score, on that account, we have to do more. We have to do more. There are people in Pakistan who can be a liability in times of crisis for Pakistan and for the region. I agree with you. I don't disagree with that. But having said that, you must give us some allowance for what is happening within our borders.
Seems like his introspection was in vain. Bureau Report, WION.
So what is the story behind Hafiz Saeed's house arrest? The Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief was taken into custody on the 31st of January this year at his home in Lahore. 4 men believed to be close to Hafiz Saeed were also placed under house arrest. The Pakistan government was under immense pressure to act against the 26/11 mastermind. In fact, Donald Trump had just assumed office as US president. In one of his first and one of his many controversial moves, he imposed a travel ban on citizens of 7 Muslim countries. Pakistan, remember, escaped by the skin of its teeth. But Islamabad had got the message. It had to act to show that it was cracking down on terror safe havens. And so Hafiz Saeed was put under house arrest under Pakistan's Anti-Terrorism Act. It was a fast from the word go. He could meet people. He had access to the internet. He even launched a political party while technically being under arrest. The detention has now been extended. It has been extended quite a few times this year. But on the last 2 occasions, a significant change was made. The Pakistani authorities detained Hafiz Saeed and his aides under not the most stringent anti-terror law that they'd used earlier, but a paler version of it. It's called the Pakistan Public Safety Law. Federal agencies in the Punjab province are now seeking an extension under the same law. The Lahore court has asked the Advocate General, the Foreign and Interior Secretaries of the state to appear on the 19th of October. Who is the man we're talking about? Hafiz Saeed certainly needs no introduction, and yet it's important to dwell on his past and his bloody record to drive home the point and comprehend the extent of Pakistan's brazenness in this case. Hafiz Saeed is the founder of a terrorist organization called the Lashkar-e-Toiba. It was later changed, the name was changed at least, to Jamaat-ud-Dawa. He is on India's list of most wanted terrorists for his involvement in a string of attacks. It began in 2001, the Indian Parliament attack, the 2006 Mumbai train bombings, and the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks, which took more than 150 lives. It was the worst ever terror strike on Indian soil, and he was the mastermind. He is believed to be close to the Pakistani army and the ISI. He's the Dirty Works Department, which explains why they continue to shield him despite mounting global pressure. The United States has placed a $10 million bounty on Hafiz Saeed's head. His outfit, the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, has been sanctioned by the United Nations. But in Pakistan, the government sees and wants the world to believe that he is a humanitarian worker. Authorities and successive governments turned a blind eye as his terror machinery flourished. His biggest support system is the military establishment and the intelligence services in Pakistan. They're widely credited for Hafiz Saeed's rise in the past 2 decades. Then come the foreign donors. The Jamaat-ud-Dawa, which fashions itself as a welfare organization in Pakistan, has access to huge funds from West Asia. He also runs a well-oiled network to raise funds across Pakistan. His organization also collects agricultural tax. Essentially, this man on your screen is running a parallel state in some parts of Pakistan. The global scrutiny and the house arrest have had no impact whatsoever on the operations of the Jamaat-ud-Dawa. They continue to amass wealth, to recruit terrorists, and to run training camps in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. What is Hafiz Saeed trying to do now? He's seeking an image makeover. He has taken a plunge into mainstream politics. One of the first steps was to launch a political front. He's calling it the Milli Muslim League. This attempt to enter mainstream politics seems like a redux of Hamid Gul's idea. Some experts say it's a well-orchestrated move to construct a new narrative and introduce jihadi outfits to the government and the polity of Pakistan. By floating a political offshoot of the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, Hafiz Saeed essentially wants to exploit the existing political vacuum in his country. This is how things stand at the moment in Pakistan. The ruling party's chief, Nawaz Sharif, was forced to demit office. One of his key opponents and detractors, Imran Khan, has a non-bailable arrest warrant against him. The opposition is in disarray. The government is busy firefighting in graft cases. And this is the perfect time to introduce rank outsiders. It suits the military as well. The move will also prevent the Jamaat-ud-Dawa's cadres from joining other terrorist groups. By floating a party, Hafiz Saeed wants to gain legitimacy, to boost support in economically backward areas of Fatah, Balochistan and Karachi. Despite suffering a loss against Kulsum Nawaz in the Lahore by-poll recently, the Milli Muslim League is showing no signs of slowing down. Despite being rejected as a political entity by the country's election commission, Pakistan's Interior Ministry continues to turn a blind eye to the Milli Muslim League's activities in Peshawar. A by-poll is scheduled in the NA4 area of this province. The Milli Muslim League has given its support to Liaquat Ali Khan, an independent candidate. Khan is not hiding his links to Hafiz Saeed's party. He is openly using the flag of the Milli Muslim League on his campaign material. Let's talk about what the world is doing. Pakistan is routinely criticized for failing to act against terrorists on its soil. While that criticism still holds, it's also time to put under scrutiny the role of the global community. Has it walked the talk on the so-called fight against terror? We'll start with Pakistan's hitherto ally, the United States. As I mentioned earlier, the US put a $10 million bounty on Hafiz Saeed. That was before Donald Trump. The words have grown sharper, the reprimand more frequent since he took office. Listen in to one of his many tirades/warnings to Pakistan in the recent months.
GDP growth has reached more than 3% last quarter, and other than the hurricanes, would have done phenomenally this, and I think we'll still do very well. But there's loopholes, illegal immigration, asylum fraud, and visa overstays. The visa overstays are...
We'll try and play out for you what Donald Trump said, and I can quote at least from what he said. We've been paying Pakistan billions and billions of dollars At the same time, they're housing the very terrorists that we are fighting, but that will have to change, and that will change immediately. He then later on went on to say, and I'm quoting again, "It is time for Pakistan to demonstrate its commitment to civilization, order and to peace." High-sounding words. These words, when they were said for the first time, the world sat up, took notice, even applauded the fact that Donald Trump is at least calling a spade, openly recognizing that Pakistan is a part of the problem, not the solution. Almost 10 months on, though, they sound like hollow words, empty rhetoric. Pakistan has not mended its ways, but President Trump, in a recent tweet, thanked Pakistani leaders for, quote-unquote, their cooperation on many fronts. Now let's talk about recent BRICS declaration, which named Pakistan-based terror groups Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Toiba. We reported it here on WION. It was a first, and it was hailed as a step in the right direction, but it seems that's where it ended. Despite China's agreement on the joint declaration, terrorists continue to receive a red carpet welcome inside Pakistan, a loyal ally of Beijing. The BRICS nations, some of the biggest and most powerful economies in the world, were content to just embarrass Pakistan and do precious little to force it to act. Then comes the United Nations, the so-called global authority on everything from fighting malaria to defeating terrorists. Even a ban by the hallowed House of Security Council has failed to deter Hafiz Saeed. The world body had placed sanctions on the Jamaat-ud-Dawa after the 26/11 terrorist attack in Mumbai. What happened? The pictures say it better than I can. Saeed's aides are contesting elections, and the man himself is being showered with rose petals. Malta-based journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia, known around the world for her exposés against the powerful, died in a car blast yesterday. Her death has sparked fears, raised concerns over press freedom in that country, with journalists demanding answers from the government. Here's a report.
Daphne Caruana Galizia was an investigative journalist. She was known around the world for leading the Panama Papers investigation. Her death has come as a shock to journalists and activists around the world. Galizia was driving in rural Malta when a powerful bomb exploded in her rented car. An eyewitness recounted the horror.
I was going up the hill, and because I live close by to Mrs. Caruana Galizia, I passed that way a lot. As soon as I started going up the hill, I saw a car coming in the opposite direction. In a matter of seconds, I saw a small explosion coming from the car and I panicked. A few seconds later, there was another larger explosion. The car continued coming down the hill, skidding at high speed, full of fire. The car missed me by around 10 feet. I tried to help, but the fire was too much, and the car ended up in the field and a small explosion occurred. But it could have been from the petrol tank. I called the police, but I couldn't do anything.
The news of Galizia's death has shaken journalists around the world. Several of them took to social media to express outrage at her murder. One of them was Galizia's son, Matthew. Calling Malta a mafia state run by crooks, he described the horror of visiting the site where the explosion took place. The European Union also condemned Galizia's murder.
President Juncker and the European Commission condemned this attack in the strongest terms possible. The right of a journalist to investigate, ask uncomfortable questions, and report effectively is at the heart of our values and needs to be guaranteed at all times.
Daphne Caruana Galizia shot to prominence by bringing to light cases of corruption, cronyism and political wrongdoing. Malta's government has sought help from the Dutch and the FBI in investigating the journalist's murder, but its silence on the attack continues to hurt Galizia's friends and family. Bureau Report, WION.
A data leak raised by a German newspaper created ripples across the globe, naming some of the most prominent figures in politics, business and the film industry. The Panama paper leak was an unprecedented phenomenon that took the world by a storm. But what is the leak all about? Take a look.
Ever wondered what Nawaz Sharif, David Cameron, Amitabh Bachchan, Petro Poroshenko and Jackie Chan have in common? They are some of the prominent names who figured in one of the biggest data leaks in the history of mankind. These names came up in the 11.5 million documents that were anonymously leaked and later published by a German newspaper. The documents were from a Panamanian law firm, Mossack Fonseca, which facilitates the setting up of secret shell companies across the globe. Though dealing with offshore companies is not illegal per se, the glaring lacune in the international law has helped the wealthy and powerful evade taxes and park funds without scrutiny. And so it became a matter of shame for those whose names came up in the leaks. Nawaz Sharif was forced to resign as the Pakistan Prime Minister. His Icelandic counterpart, Sigmundur Gunnlaugsson, too met with a similar fate. But many, including British Prime Minister David Cameron and UAE's President Khalifa bin Zayed, went unchecked. While the firm maintains that it complies with anti-money laundering laws, not everyone is convinced. Bureau Report, WION.
Joining us this evening from Malta, Paul Cox, he's the editor of the midweek edition. We also have with us Ray Locker, National Security Editor at USA Today, with us from Washington. Good evening to both of you. Paul, how far has the investigation progressed? Her son has accused the Prime Minister of complicity. The Prime Minister has said that even though she was a critic, he will make sure that her killers are face the law.
That's
how
right.
are things progressing?
The Prime Minister said that 1.5 hours after the car exploded yesterday, on Monday in fact. Whereas the son, Matthew Caruana Galizia, the son of Daphne, the victim of the car bomb attack, since yesterday night has been blaming, if not directly, but of complicity, the Maltese government. Of course, the Maltese government was one of Daphne's major targets in her articles, in her blogs, in her criticisms and attacks. And in fact, it all started mainly when Daphne published the Panama Papers as they affected Malta. And when she did that, she revealed that one of the current ministers, serving ministers in the Labour government, was in fact mentioned in the Panama Papers scandal. Now, of course, Matthew Caruana Galizia, her son, is blaming the government for failing to protect her mother, for failing to take action on the news she revealed, for failing to take action and strengthen the institutions like the police, like the judicial system, like the Attorney General's office. That is why Matthew Caruana Galizia is blaming of complicity the Maltese government. In the meantime, the investigation is still at a standstill. The Maltese forensic experts have not done anything at all except preserve the site of the crime. Basically, they've covered the car, the pieces of the car that are left, and unfortunately, the body of the victim still remains on the scene of the crime, awaiting the arrival of a Dutch forensic group and a group sent by the FBI, by the US FBI.
Ray, your thoughts on who could be, this is an ongoing investigation, of course, but this is a woman who exposed a lot of people, and many of the rich and mighty across the world saw it as a personal attack. So when her son says that he's blaming the culture of impunity in Malta, we can't say for sure who could be behind the killing just yet.
Well, I think that's right. It's too early to tell. Obviously, she angered a lot of powerful people in Malta, which has a reputation around the world as a place where you can do some shady business and banking practices, and she seemed to have nailed it. I mean, the Panama Papers scandal identified people all around the world, as you mentioned earlier, Nawaz Sharif, the guy from Iceland, in finding ways to skirt paying taxes. And when you identify those people publicly, sometimes they take action. It's happened here in the United States where journalists have been murdered because of the work they've done.
We will talk about other similar cases, and there are many, I can tell you. Paul, what has the public reaction been like? What have people said? How do they see these developments in Malta?
Yes, there has been a huge public outcry. Yesterday, last night, Monday night, 6 hours after the bomb attack, a silent vigil was held. Many thousands of people attended along the shores of one of our villages, Lima. Today, this morning, another crowd, a more vocal and vociferous crowd, protested in front of the law courts in our capital city. And tonight, in about 10-15 minutes time, another protest is about to start, this time in front of Parliament. So the people are making their voices heard, they're shouting for justice, and most of them are accusing the politicians of killing Daphne Caruana Galizia.
The European Commission said that it was horrified by what appeared to be a targeted attack, but you mentioned what happens in the US. It happens, I believe, in every part of the world. Journalists are targeted for doing their job. How many Western countries have been able to protect journalists who potentially hurt the interests of the rich and the powerful?
Well, I think there are a lot of protections. I mean, here in the United States, most people I know and work with go about doing their jobs feeling relatively safe, knowing that probably the worst thing that's going to happen to you is you're criticized a lot, often by, on social media via Twitter and other places. But day in, day out, your personal safety is assured. In other parts of the world, though, that's not really guaranteed. And when people feel like they can act on their own with relative impunity, they often do so. It's only when, the rest of the society bands together and says, look, we're not going to tolerate this, do things change. And that takes a long time sometimes. And an act like this could be a catalyzing moment for people who say, we're fed up with this. And it emboldens other journalists, more things get exposed. And hopefully it's something that helps lead to greater change.
Paul, tell us a little more about the woman who was called a one-woman WikiLeaks. I believe a half hour before she was killed, she posted on her website an item about a libel claim that the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff had brought against her.
Yes, in fact it was 25 minutes before. It was 35 minutes past 2 yesterday afternoon when she posted her last blog on her website called Running Commentary. She'd been this mission of hers against the corrupt officials and government had been going on ever since the Panama Papers leaked, and ever since she revealed that a minister of the current government was involved in the Panama Papers. Of course, the government, the administration, took it upon themselves to start issuing libel cases against Daphne Caruana Galizia for her articles, for her reports. She did the same, counter cases. Yesterday morning, there was a case being heard in court where the Chief of Staff of the current Prime Minister, Keith Schembri, was in court for a libel case he instituted against the leader of the opposition on the same Panama Papers scandal. And she was commenting on that 25 minutes before she died.
Most unfortunate. Paul Cox, Ray Locker, thanks very much for joining us on this discussion. Galizia's death, in fact, sheds light on how attacks on journalists are not unusual acts of suppressing free speech. Amongst all beats, journalists covering politics and war, we understand, are the most targeted. A survey by the Committee to Protect Journalists has recorded the number of journos killed since 1992. The survey reveals that more than 1,200 journalists around the world have been killed for confirmed motives. More than 490 have been killed for unconfirmed motives in this period. The top 9 deadliest countries for journalists currently include Iraq, 185 deaths reported since 1992. Syria with 111 deaths, Philippines with 78, Somalia with 63, Pakistan with 60, followed by Algeria, Russia with 58, Colombia and India with 47 and 41. The highest targeted beats are politics and war. More than 580 political reporters have been killed for doing their job in the last 25 years. More than 520 war reporters have lost their life in the same period. 265 human rights journalists, people covering corruption, the crime beat, even journalists covering culture have been targeted. And those who follow stories from the world of business and sports have also been murdered for chasing the truth and exposing the high and mighty.